leaded. Leclerc, then Hamilton, then Perez.
Spa-Francorchamps started life as a public road triangle where rich guys in wool coats launched 10-cylinder death traps through Belgian farmland at speeds the locals hadn't even dreamt of on their wagons yet. No barriers, no helmets, just vibes and maybe a prayer or two in French, Dutch, and German, because Spa's in a region that has no idea what country it wants to be a part of.
I don't know where we are. We don't know.
The drivers adore it, the fans respect it, and the track itself, it doesn't give a damn what you think. Spa doesn't care about your sponsorship package or hospitality suite. Spa wants to know if you can survive Blanchimont in the wet with 30 seconds left to go.
Can you do it?
And that's why we love it. It's got the most iconic corners in all of motorsport. Eau Rouge, Radillon, Pouhon,
Le Hill, the Her.
And somehow, Blanchimont still exists, even though it's been abusing drivers harder than fathers named Yas. This weekend, the World Endurance Championship rolls into Spa for another round of Why Does It Always Rain Here?
Oh, I hate the rain.
So let's take a look back at the chaotic, beautiful, and sometimes downright insane history of Spa-Francorchamps, and why, despite being a French invention, it's still one of the most beloved circuits on Earth.
I don't know.
An engineer.
Let's wind the clock back to 1921. Local motorsports enthusiast Jules Détier, Joseph de Crohez, and Henry Langley van Oppenheimer wanted to make one of those new city-to-city races to replace the Muse Cup they'd given up during the Great War.
Good, that was pretty lame. Yeah, let's never do that again.
As a newspaper owner, Thiers looked at a 9-mile triangle of public roads in the Ardennes forest and thought, this would be a great place for a mass grave. The idea was a race that looped through the towns of Francorchamps, Malmedy, and Stavelot, a kind of sadistic tourism board brochure where the hill's scenery and danger became an adrenaline junkie's wet dream.
Woo! My blood is pumping!
They got everything set and ready, only for one racer to sign up. So instead, the motorcycles took it for a spin, and the cars made their first showing the next year in 1922. Endurance racing began driving there in 1924, and the single-seaters finally found their way with the European Grand Prix the next year. It was dangerous, fast, and terrifying, so naturally the drivers loved it.
I love it. It isn't scary at all.
And kept coming year after year. Apparently Mother Nature didn't appreciate the appearance of gas guzzlers and cursed the area to never have a consistent amount of rain.
Make it rain!
The original layout was nearly 15 kilometers, or 9.5 miles of open road hell, featuring turns that would later become legendary, and straights long enough for cars to hit top speeds before becoming airborne over gentle Belgian hills. Forget track limits. If you missed a corner, you ended up in a cow pasture or you became an ent. That is, half person and half tree. And unless you were a tree, you'd hate the wet weather dipping the tires in and out of wet conditions, making the already harsh corners that much more dangerous. It was built as a speed course, and at the time was the fastest road course on the calendar.
I really shouldn't have to explain this again. I'm fast. I'm so fast.
Long straights that switched into those harsh triangular turns meant the drivers were playing chicken at the corners to gain pace, and the death toll showed, having taken 8 drivers by 1939. Safety measures were non-existent unless you count the cow fences and some hay bales stacked at the corners.
Good enough for me.
Which the Belgians did. Don't forget, Belgians are Germany's rednecks and were probably drunk during the designing, prepping, and construction. They loved being known for the fastest track, though, and even decided to shorten the Ancien Douane, so the cars were going even faster uphill into the turn.
Don't be a pussy!
Spa had cemented itself as one of Europe's premier circuits, just behind Monza, Nürburgring, and the Grim Reaper's summer home.
And now I am become death.
Pre-World War II racing was less about lap times and more about survival. The 24 Hours of Spa had developed a reputation for cars disappearing into the forest like a Wendigo lived out there. All the corners but one are fast, and the Masta Kink was a mental challenge to keep your foot down and not hit the house in the middle.
So where's the kink?
Racing paused in 1939. Oh, God damn it, can I make a video without the Nazis showing up? Is this how Pennsylvanian and Argentinian kids feel making a family tree?
Guten Tag.
Racing returned in 1947, and the cars were even faster, with better engines and worse aerodynamics. Drivers were now doing 150 miles per hour on public roads lined with barbed wire and stone houses. Spa had now become the circuit equivalent of strapping a jet engine to a coffin and aiming it at a hill. Spa has a tragic side. A very tragic side. Tragic as the trauma-dumping goth in all leather you met at a dive bar. Between 1950 and 1970, the circuit claimed 15 more lives. 1960 was particularly grim. The practice session featured 2 car failures that paralyzed Michael Taylor and broke both of Sterling Moss's legs. Then the race began the next day, and spectators watched in horror as Chris Bristow crashed, was thrown from his car, and decapitated by a barbed wire fence. To top it all off, 15 minutes later, Alan Stacey's fatal crash followed, caused by a bird flying into his head. That's right, Spa wasn't just dangerous due to high speeds, it had wildlife airstrikes to worry about. Between those and the barbed wire, I guess Spa was the only part of France still a war zone. Jim Clark said he hated Spa, even though he held the record there. You would think eventually these guys will listen to the top driver giving them a warning, but drivers never change, and there were still more deaths and injuries before any serious action was taken. The tipping point came when Jackie Stewart took his tumble into a woodshed on the Mazda corner and decided that landing upside down covered in fuel like a duck in a Dawn commercial was one close call too many. Finally, the drivers came together and began calling for changes or threatening to straight up boycott the circuit.
We quit.
The ever-helpful FIA looked around and went, okay, maybe asking people to do 200 kilometers per hour on country roads surrounded by cliffs and farmhouses isn't sustainable.
Yes, I see your point.
They made the track add some barriers at the corners, but the deaths didn't stop in the other racing series, and drivers were becoming increasingly hesitant to even enter anymore.
No way, no way!
1970 marked the last F1 race on the original layout. It was just too dangerous. Less deadly than the Nürburgring somehow, but if there was an incident and you died on track, they didn't always stop the race to move your body.
Just go around them!
Bristow and Stacey didn't deserve to become obstacles, and it gave a grim reminder to every fellow driver on the grid what exactly a mistake could cost them. In response, Spa was dropped from the F1 calendar until the track could be reworked, or someone invented ghost racing on iRacing. In the meantime, Belgium scrambled to create alternatives. Zolder and Nivelles briefly took over as hosts, but they had the personality of unsalted soup.
I'm bored. You're boring me.
F1 fans wanted Spa back. F1 drivers wanted Spa not to kill them. In 1979, Spa was reimagined as a shorter, safer, kinda circuit. The new version measured about 7 kilometers. Still long, still fast, but now it at least had some runoff areas and fewer cows. In the name of keeping the track a racetrack and not an ICBM launching platform,
And Fernando Alonso goes over the top there!
they have the distance of the track but retained the number of corners. They kept the good stuff. La Source, Eau Rouge, Rédillon, and Blanchimont all survived, but with fewer walls of death and the ability to reach you before the car catches fire.
Gee, thanks!
It wasn't perfect. It was Spa with a helmet on, but the speed was still there, and it still holds the greatest elevation change on an F1 circuit, a hair over 100 meters. Eau Rouge and Rédillon, the corner named Redwater because blood literally flows from it. For decades, it's been the ultimate challenge. Flat out for the brave, fatal for the overconfident.
We're gonna die.
We're not gonna die.
It's one of the only corners that drivers both love and fear. If that's not perfect motorsport drama, I don't know what is. Despite offering amazing racing, Spa still had too many deaths to justify and was removed from the calendar in 2006. It had also missed the 2003 season, but that was because of tobacco laws in Belgium, literally 1984.
And before you can say 1984...
Anyway, there were safety improvements planned, but the event organizers went bankrupt before they came to fruition.
Got no money.
Why?
I spent it all on gambling.
We're starting to get a picture on this channel for just how rough it is trying to run a racetrack. A new investor spent around 19 million euros fixing up the track, and Spa was able to return in 2007. These safety improvements have been questioned to this day if they did enough, as we have had 4 deadly accidents since Spa's return, even though it was an alternating track. Spa giveth and Spa taketh.
The dice giveth and the dice taketh away.
3 of those 4 fatal accidents have been on Rédillon. However, this is the last turn left of the original circuit, and anytime changes are proposed, people argue if it would still be Spa without it. 'Cause, sure, your feelings about a circuit matter more than the lives of those drivers.
Don't be a dick!
We lost Adrian Nicholas in 2008, Sebastian Clouseau in 2013, and Antoine Hubert in 2019, leading to that heartbreaking tribute on that terrible Netflix docuseries the Europeans claim to hate. Pierre Gasly stated that the loss of Antoine Hubert was one of the worst moments of his life, and anyone who has lost a friend too early can attest to that feeling. Gasly carries on his friend's memory in each race, and you know that he must have a new and complicated relationship with Rédillon. How do you focus on your racing line watching the exact spot your friend died at? It's easy to talk about the deaths in the sport before we were all alive, but losing these bright young flames of passion is never a feeling that anyone could get used to. Unfortunately, there's one more recent example of a fatality on Spa, Delano Van 't Hoff, who tragically lost his life at the Kemmel Straight in 2023. Hoff had a natural talent for motorsport, only starting karting at 11 and fighting up to Formula Regional by 18. He won a podium in 2022 after a botched shoulder surgery he had to later have fixed. At the Formula Regional European Championship race at Spa, Barack Obama must have turned on his weather machine that day.
Obama controls the weather.
And if you look at the footage, those genuine children should not have been allowed to race in such wet conditions. Spa, like Monaco and Monza, is too iconic to be dropped. Unless Liberty Media finds out they can build a street circuit in Dubai shaped like the F1 logo or something. And now that you're up to date on eulogies, we can talk about some of the highs of this track.
That was tragic.
It is still a staple in World Endurance Championship, Formula 1, and GT3 calendars. It hosts the legendary 24 Hours of Spa, which is like the Nürburgring 24, but with more waffles and slightly fewer broken ankles. A track this storied has had too many iconic moments to count, so we'll just go over some of my favorites. 1998, the most famous pileup in F1 history. It looked like someone pressed copy and paste on every car in the field into one corner when learning Photoshop.
Well, stop the race. They'll have to red flag this. Terrible. Oh, this is quite appalling. This is the worst start for a Grand Prix that I have ever seen in the whole of my life.
Plus when Schumacher stormed down the paddock like he was ready to drop gloves NHL style with Coulthard. 2008. Lewis Hamilton shows us what a future 7-time world champion can do in a wheel-to-wheel race with Raikkonen, while the Iceman shows us that if he gave a shit, he could have that many titles too. 2021, the race that wasn't. Spa was so wet they ran 2 laps behind the safety car, handed out half points, and called it a day. Spa didn't even have to kill anyone to remind everyone who's boss. So here's to Spa, Belgium's most terrifyingly perfect mistake. It started as 3 roads through some rainy hills and ended up as one of the greatest tests of man and machine in motorsport history. And if Formula 1 ever drops it from the calendar, we riot. Like, comment, subscribe if you want more racing history from hell. New videos every weekend, new shorts every week. Unless I get launched off Rédillon in real life, in which case someone else will have to finish the racetrack video series.